Hello everyone, this is Stephen Balch, your instructor for Introduction to Macroeconomics at Ozarka College. Today what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of feedback on the Chapter 17 and 18 activities that I finished grading yesterday. And then I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up due for our last set of chapter activities next week. And then I'm also going to briefly talk about the final exam. Okay. So first thing is, like I said, I did finish grading the Chapter 17 and 18 activities yesterday. Go ahead and look at your grades for those activities and read the grading comments and let me know if you have any questions at all. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Most of you did well on the Chapter 17 and 18 activities, so keep up the good work on that. The discussion that we had for Chapter 17 and 18 that dealt with the primary and secondary effects of the steel tariffs. I thought that went very well. I really appreciate everyone's input on the discussion. So keep up the good work on that as well. And that brings us to what we've got coming up due for our last set of chapter activities for this semester. So we go to the activities page in my Ozarka. Right now we're on kind of the last portion of week 14 of the semester. Just have a couple of days left in week 14. We don't have anything else due this week since we had work due earlier this week. We don't have anything else due this week, but you should be spending some time this week working on the last set of chapter activities, specifically for Chapter 19, which are due by Wednesday of next week, April 30th. Okay? Now, something that's a little bit different with this set of activities is that there is no discussion. Okay? So I've given you a little bit of a break for this last set of activities. All you have is just the assignment and the chapter test. You don't have a discussion for Chapter 19. So kind of keep that in mind. That's why you only notice 2 items under week 15 there. Okay. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what you're going to be learning about in Chapter 19. You're going to be looking at basically economic development. All right. So in the chapter, you're going to learn about various classifications of economic development. For example, there are some countries that are very highly developed, like the United States and Canada, a lot of the European countries and so forth. But there are other countries that are still developing, okay, and have a completely different economic system because of them still developing their economies. And so you're going to be learning about the different classification systems that we use for different economies around the world. You'll also look at the factors which determine the level of economic development. For example, education, standard of living. These are just a couple of the many factors which are considered when we're looking at how developed an economy is. Okay. You'll also look at the specific characteristics which distinguish developed countries from developing countries. You'll also look at the role that productivity, technology, education, and government plays in economic development. All right? So that's basically what you're going to be looking at in Chapter 19. Remember the resources that you have available. Make sure that you're actually using the resources that I provide. And make sure that your answers that you give on the assignment and on the discussion questions, make sure, actually there is no discussion, I'm sorry, but make sure it's consistent with the assignment. Your assignment answers should be consistent with the information provided in the assigned resources. Okay? So just be careful with that. Make sure, and most of you are doing that, but just make sure you're using the resources provided, okay? And of course, like I said, you've got your textbook, you've got your videos that I've linked on the assignment page. got your PowerPoint slides. I know I always remind you of those things, but I always like to remind you anyway. And let's see. That's really all we have due next week is just those two items for Chapter 19. And then the only other thing that we'll have this semester will be our final exam. Of course, it'll be during final exam week, which will be the week after next, specifically May 5th through the 7th. Okay? So you've got a 3-day window of time there to complete the final exam. And I will be sending out an email probably tomorrow that will give you more details about the final exam. But just in general, what you need to do is go back and study the concepts that we've learned this semester. Those concepts that were covered on your midterm exam, on your chapter test. Now, do not study the specific questions that were on those tests. Make sure you're studying the concepts, okay? All right, that's very important. And then that's really all I have for you for today. So enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend, and I will talk to you again sometime late next week. Thank you.